The Football Show on Off the Ball.
With Paddy Power, the greatest football partnership since Shearer and Owen.
I'm prepared to do anything I can to play for my country again.
Do it then. What about your start to the game?
It wasn't bad, was it?
Why should an honest answer be a mistake?
How can a modern day manager not have a mobile phone?
Why should he?
Welcome along to tonight's football show. We have a special treat tonight in that John Giles might usually be on a different night of the week, but tonight being a Thursday, I actually couldn't remember what day it was there, John. It's been one of those weeks.
It's my usual day, Johnny.
Yeah.
Different time.
Different time. So we have an earlier John Giles this week to discuss, I suppose, Liverpool-Manchester United. Champions League action with Liverpool winning comfortably last night, Spurs winning comfortably, Manchester United in Europa League action this evening. And also we're going to discuss some, I suppose, really pertinent matters in terms of the game. A very worrying study about dementia we will talk about, and also the issue of black players in football and John's role in promoting black players as a coach, most notably Chris Hughton, who ironically is a coach actually kind of looking for a job at the moment, and I suppose we'll get to it later, but Chris Hughton, he's a man that's lost to the game at the moment, isn't he?
Yeah, Chris is a good lad. I think he's been harshly treated, Johnny, in football. You know, Newcastle, Norwich, Brighton, where I think he did very good jobs. And he's a quiet type of lad, he's a dignified lad. And sometimes in management that might not help. You know, sometimes the directors want loud-mouthed guys who don't do as well as Chris does. But I'm sure he'll get a job somewhere else. But I thought the latest job at Brighton, I thought he was very harshly treated. I thought he did a really good job there.
A couple of Irish players I've spoken to that have played under him, Richie Towell and Danny Mandrow, would both just speak about so highly of how he looked after them, and if you got injured, how he'd look after you, pure decency.
Well, he's a decent individual, Chris. You know, I didn't have much time with him. I had a fair bit of time with him to know him reasonably well. Very quiet lad, but a very dignified lad. And you could never imagine Chris doing anything that he shouldn't be doing, particularly with players, you know. And that wouldn't always be the case, you know. Like in my time, managers who have been ex-players would treat you worse than anybody that had never been a manager. And that was pretty common in the game. But I could never imagine Chris Hughton behaving in a way that wasn't respectful to players of today from his own particular time.
He's been frequently linked with the Ireland job in some shape or form, which obviously he isn't now. But what have you made of Ireland the last couple of games and the Denmark game coming forward?
Well, we haven't played well, Johnny, in the last couple of games, but we're still there. You know, if we beat Denmark, which is not impossible, it would be great. I think the two matches we played, I think what was disappointing is that we didn't play well in the matches. You know, you can take a beating if you play well as you possibly can, and I don't think we did that. We just didn't play well enough to win or get the points in those particular two matches. But it's still there. You know, at least the last match, I know it's a difficult match against Denmark, but you know, Denmark are not one of the best teams in the world either. So it's still possible.
Looking at Eriksen, actually, and in talking about Spurs as well, what have you made of him this season? Is he kind of like a guy who's carrying a bit of weight on his shoulders, or...?
Well, I don't think it's much weight on his shoulders as weight in his head. Because, you see, it's impossible to play football, Johnny, at that level if it looked like he was going to move to Real Madrid, for example. And it wasn't a situation where he was saying, I don't really want to go to Real Madrid. You know, I want to stay at Spurs. So, you know, his heart was in Real Madrid, and your heart can't be in two places at the one time. So I think what's happened to Eriksen is that he was disappointed that he didn't. Maybe Spurs were looking for too much money or whatever it was. But the fact is, he didn't go to where he wanted to go. So now, obviously, he's back in a place where he didn't really want to be. Now, that's not the best way to play football. I mean, from Pochettino's point of view, particularly, and Spurs' point of view, you want everybody committed to what they're doing. And in Spurs' situation, Eriksen, Vertonghen, Valdeveld, they're out of contract. So, again, your heart can't be in two places at the one time. And I found it very difficult to win things when everybody's pulling together. The managers, you have to believe he's there forever, and the whole team are settled and striving for the same thing. That can't be the case at Spurs. And Eriksen would be one of the main culprits, if you call him a culprit in this particular situation.
Well, with all due respect, should he not? He's paid his wage. Should he not still be performing?
Well, yeah, but you can't buy loyalty and ambition and team spirit with money, Johnny. You either have that or you don't have it. You can't put a price on it. Players who could be playing with half the money could be given their all to the club. What we do know about Eriksen is that he did want to go. So you can't be in two places at the one time. And it's nothing to do with money, you know. Obviously, like he's been paid for. I'm not saying he shouldn't be doing what he's been doing, but if you're looking at football as I know it, just because you're paying him a lot of money, you're not going to buy his loyalty. Loyalty is loyalty, and I don't think he's been loyal to Spurs. And again, it could have been Levy's situation, behaving not very well, and then he was looking for too much money for him, right? So he's left now. He's going to be out of contract at the end of the season. And you know as an individual, if you're playing for Spurs, you have to give that heart and soul. But if you know you're going to leave at the end of the season and you wanted to go and you'd be disappointed, you can't give what you should be given to the team. And that, there's too many players at Spurs in that situation, not quite as much as Eriksen, but a few players who want to go or their contract is running out. I know as an ex-player, I wanted to believe when I was at Leeds that we're there forever. That all the team was, and there was none of the team in my time there wanted to get away. We were all in Leeds together, and anyway, in those days you couldn't get away so easily. But I didn't want to go, and all the players that I was with Don Reevy, we wanted to believe we were there forever, and we were giving it every we could every week, and that was difficult enough to win, trophies. But when you've got 5 or 6 or 7 players at Spurs who are definitely not committed to the club in the way you would want them to be, then the lads who are committed, these players come down all in the dressing room together. And you're looking across, well, he couldn't be as committed as I am. Why is Eriksen out of the team, for example? You know, he's a very talented lad, but Pochettino knows that when he's on the pitch, mentally he can't be given it what he should be given it. And there's nothing, it's not to do, the money, I agree with you that if you're getting paid then you should be doing money. But in football and any sport, you can't buy loyalty. It's either there or it's not there. And I think in Eriksen's case and a few of the good players, it just can't be there if you know that they want to be somewhere else.
I suppose Roy Keane would have the contrarian point of view. This brings me on to the game on Sunday when Manchester United played Arsenal. I'm sure you saw or heard of his comments beforehand, where the players of both teams were kind of hugging each other in the tunnel beforehand, and Keane sort of went on a rant saying, this is a war, these are your rivals, you should be going out there. What do you make of that? I suppose it was typical Roy Keane. Well, that
was Roy. I mean, that's the way Roy behaved and that's the way he thought. In my day you didn't go out together anyway, but if I was playing against one of the lads that I played with in the Irish team, he knew and I knew it'd be war when you get out on the pitch, but it doesn't have to be war going on the pitch. But that was Roy. That's the way he saw it, that's the way he believes it, which that's fair enough. But if you ask me in my situation, I wouldn't quite be like that. I'd be ready for war when we got on the pitch. And you could be friendly to each other a little bit before you went on the pitch. You wouldn't be snarling and shaking your fist at the fella across way from you going on the pitch. You'd save that till you got on the pitch. But that's right. That's right. That's the way he behaved and that's the way he was. Probably one of the things that made him a great player. But, I've met other great players who didn't do that. They might do other things, but they didn't do that.
What do you make of him at the moment? Does he entertain you when he's on TV, or could you see him getting back into management?
I think he'll stick at what he's doing.
Why?
I think people want to hear him. He gives a voice to what he believes in. I think he's entertaining in that particular way. He does say what he believes. I wouldn't always agree with him, but I'd respect what he says. And I think when the situation calls for what he was great at, he's very, very good. If you go back like a while ago when Manchester City played Manchester United, remember the match? And I think it was Fred, was it Fred? As he said, that played for Manchester United.
Yeah.
The midfield player.
Yeah.
Didn't chase back.
Yeah, that would be. Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And they went on. City went on to score to win the match.
Yeah.
And Gary Neville was trying to make the case that the reason he didn't run back was because he was tired. And of course that was up.
Red Rags.
That was up to Keane, because that's one thing he would do. And he said, "What?
Yeah.
He's tired after 53 minutes."
Yeah.
That's one thing that Keane would never let anybody do, and he wouldn't do himself. when it comes to the actual analysis,
I think he falls down.
I think he's not so good at that, right? But in the general play, and he will. I mean, in that particular night as well, I think it was the night, or one of the nights anyway, where Pogba had they played badly at one place, and Pogba was interviewed, and Keane, and he said, I think one of the lads said, "What do you think of that, Roy?" He said, "I don't believe a word he's saying."
That's right. Yeah.
He was absolutely right. So you're going to get the truth from him as he sees it in the way that he played himself.
Like it or not.
Yeah. And for that, he's. I mean, to be honest, I think he's in a different class to Gary Neville or Carragher
as an analyst.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, definitely. I think he's not so much for the analytical part of it, but for the straightforward out. This is what should happen. Might not be right, but he'll say it as he...
And he believes what he says.
And of course. And he says it in a very, very forceful way. So I think people watching it, myself included, could say, yeah, I like that. Like, you see, I've seen when Carragher and Neville in particularly, generally speaking, unless Graham Souness is there, there's nobody to challenge them. Now, when Keane was on, that particularly, he challenged Neville, and Neville actually started laughing, do you remember?
Nervously,
as if Roy was being funny. He wasn't being funny. He was absolutely right what he was saying, because the thing that Fred didn't do was one thing, one of many things that Keane would do. He'd chase his backside off to get back and stop that particular danger.
And Fred was one of the players who struggled again for Manchester United, albeit in a decent performance on Sunday against Liverpool, which ended 1-1. What did you make of it?
I thought it was very good from Manchester United's point of view, and it showed that they can play better than they have been playing. Now, but what you want is the same attitude week in and week out. Just because it's Liverpool at home and they knew that they had to do certain things and play in a certain way, certainly with effort and heart, that's what they did. And in fact, I thought they were a little bit unlucky not to win the match, despite what Klopp was saying afterwards. Actually, I was a bit surprised with Klopp. What he was saying was, I don't agree with the way they're defending. In other words, what he was saying was, I don't like the way they played against us. Well, every team is entitled to play as they seem fit to get the result.
Pochettino will always praise the manager of a team who plays football against Man City, because he knows once they play football against Man City and don't park the bus. So Klopp's record at Old Trafford is so poor, I think he's kind of papering over the cracks a bit as well.
Well, I don't know about what he was, but certainly at the weekend, he definitely complained about the way that they had so much possession and Manchester United set back. Well,
who cares?
Who cares? If Manchester United doing what they're entitled to do, you can't complain about that. And also, I think he made a big deal about the goal. I mean, if I was the manager, I'd be getting onto the defence, because the incident happened, 70 yards from the goal. There was a lot that happened before Manchester United scored. So to go down as if I was the manager, I'd be looking at the defence as to why it happened.
On that, John, it was Matip that pretty much lost Rashford. He kind of for the cross, but defensively and Van Dijk in recent weeks, do Liverpool look as secure as they should maybe look defensively?
Well, I think they play this high line now since the start of the season, and even last night in the match where they won comfortably, there was 2 occasions, and it's like an offside trap. Now, but the goal of Manchester United they didn't play an offside trap. They just
lost the ball.
They lost it for Rashford, and Manchester United and Rashford did very well to get in behind them. But there was a lot happened between the incident where it could have been a free kick with VAR to what actually happened. What I'm saying is, if I was the manager of Liverpool, I'd be looking at why the goal was scored, not looking back on the incident. So, he was a bit didn't receive it very well.
No, he didn't.
Liverpool didn't play well on the day. I thought Manchester United played better than them, but because they played with a spirit and a bit of go in them, and that should be the starting point against anybody, whether it be any of the teams in the Premiership. But because it was Liverpool,
they upped their game.
They upped their game.
Was it anything to do with putting 3 at the back and changing their system?
It could be a bit, but what you said there was they upped their game. Now, when you're talking about a team who ups their game, there's something wrong if they're not doing it week in and week out. What you have to do as a professional footballer is up your game in every game you play. In other words, do the best you possibly can. You might not be good enough, but you do the best you possibly can. So the fact that you would say, and a lot of people, they up their game, well, I'd be saying, well, why don't you up your game every week? If you were upping your game like you did against Liverpool, you wouldn't be in the position you're in. So that's the thing about professional football, or any football, Gaelic, hurling, or anything else. The first thing you do is you up your game every match you play. And they did up the game, and it was very good. And I thought McTominay, isn't that his last name? I thought he was very, very good. I thought he was the best midfield player on the pitch.
On the pitch?
Yeah. But generally speaking, Manchester United did up the game. I thought they played well, and they played with a spirit that we hadn't seen for weeks. And what it shows you in many ways is, why didn't they do it all the other weeks?
Do you have sympathy for Solskjaer, or do you think he's out of his depth, or will things come right?
Well, to be quite honest, I was never in favour of him getting the job, and I'm on record as that. I think he was the right man at the right time to get the players back playing, in to get the results they did. For a while. But I don't think he was the manager to continue that. Actually, what they needed at that particular stage was a young Ferguson. Now, there's not many of them around. So I think he was out of his depth. I still think he's out of his depth a bit. I don't think if he's getting the backing from the board. Has he bought the player? Actually, the 3 players they bought in the summer were good. Is he in charge of that? Is he not in charge of that? So that was only one game last weekend. But I think the policy at the club, actually, Lukaku and Sanchez, and they haven't replaced them. Now, I don't think that's his fault, but that's a fact with Manchester United.
One thing you'd say about them, in fairness, this season, defensively, they're not bad at all, and Maguire has obviously made a big difference.
Well, Maguire's a good player. He's a very, very good player. I think Manchester City actually slipped up very badly again, but that's another day's work. But I think...
it's an interesting point, though, because it could be the difference in them not winning the league and winning the league, the defence, you know.
Definitely. I mean, I think he was made for Manchester City, but United got him. I think he's a very good player. And the other 2 players they bought have been good. They've worked out well for them, young players. They still have a long way to go, but it showed that with the right attitude on the pitch last weekend, they matched Liverpool, at worst matched them and could have won the game.
What did you make of Liverpool last night?
Well, they played a lot better last night. Chamberlain did his stuff for them. He scored, well, the first goal was a good goal, but the second goal was a terrific goal.
What a strike.
Terrific. One of the
Did you ever
best.
score any like that yourself outside of the right, the way he dinked it into the top corner?
Not that way. Actually, like in my day, the conditions and the ball would be different to get that type of swerve on it.
It'd be a lot heavier, I suppose, would it? The ball as well.
Yeah. It wouldn't fly through the air as it does today, and the conditions wouldn't be there for us. It was a terrific goal, but I think it's a thing that Liverpool need to be getting more goals from midfield.
Absolutely.
Anyway, you know what I mean? Like, we got the 3 up front, which are great goal scorers, but there's nothing wrong with, like, the midfield. One of the midfielders coming in with 10 goals or 12 goals a season.
Not really happening.
It's not happening for them, you know. Milner doesn't score.
Henderson
doesn't score. Wijnaldum now and again, but they're not getting the 10 goals each. Now, I'm not saying they can all do that, but you should be getting a good few goals from midfield in certain matches, whereas it is left to one. So if they get him playing like that and being a goal scorer as well, I think it could be a huge asset for Liverpool. But Liverpool well deserved to win on the night. I thought overall, in the match overall, they played quite well and won, I'd say, fairly comfortably near the end. But there were a couple of occasions in the first half, you know, where we were talking about, they had this high line. Do you remember they got through twice in the first half? They didn't finish very well. But it's a thing that they've had all season, Liverpool, and they've got to be very, very, very careful what they're doing.
It must be to do with as part of this high press, that the higher the defence are up the pitch. But, like, to me, it seems to be fraught with dangers. What do you think of it? Because
definitely.
Good teams will expose it.
Well, they don't have to do much. All they do is knock it over the top, and they've been doing it all season. It's like the old offside trap. You know, like a lot of the 2 occasions last night, there's no need for them to be. If you stay with the runner and stay with the player, they'd handle that easy. But it's you're on a wing in a prayer. If you're taking chance, once you push up like that and the fellas are not offside, they're right through. And if you play against better opposition, then they could have done better with the chances that they had. So it's something that they've been doing all season, Liverpool. And I don't see any reason for it. I mean, they've got terrific defenders. Van Dijk and the couple of lads that are playing with them, they're quick, and they could just get behind these players. So it goes over the head, they're going to win the chase. So they're getting too high. I don't know why it started. I don't remember them doing it last year, but they won well last night. I mean, they recovered as good teams do from a poorish performance against Manchester United to go and win in the manner in which they did last night.
We'll go to the ad soon, but before we do, Chelsea's situation is improving week by week, really, under Lampard, isn't it? And he seems to be getting things together.
Yeah, he's a good lad, Johnny. You know, he's I just have the names down here. He got Abraham, Mount, Hudson, Idy and Tamori, young fellas that he's I think what's happened there in many ways, it's not such a negative thing because they can't buy any players, because of the transfer situation. So he's got the young players to come in, and I think what's happened as well that the crowd, the Chelsea supporters like him. He's popular as a player, which doesn't always work, but they realise the position he's in. He can't be going out buying players. So he's probably, the way it's worked for Chelsea, I think, that over the years they had to be there or thereabouts to be winning things. They didn't have time to blood these young lads. Now they can.
Isn't it a good thing, though? Do you know that?
Well, that's what I say. It's a plus rather than a minus for him, because if he was in the transfer market, he might be buying players straight away, and these lads would still be out on loan. Now, the only chance these lads have of playing and showing what they can do is being on the pitch. And that's what's happened. I mean, he has to play these players. And in the long run, I think it'll be a plus rather than a minus for the club and for Frank Lampard anyway. Because I think if he doesn't win anything this year, the crowd won't be on his back. I think they'll say, yeah, he's doing a good job and he's one of our own and we understand the position he's in.
After the break, we're going to talk dementia in football and John's signing of black players when it was quite rare to do so. Welcome back to the Football Show. John Giles is with me this evening, and now we're going to discuss a very thorny issue which has surfaced, I suppose, this week in terms of studies illustrating a quite frightening rate of dementia from former footballers. This was a study that was, I suppose the findings were released in the past few days, and I think the study took around 22 months or thereabouts, around 2 years, and it found that footballers are 3.5 times more likely to die from dementia. This has been, I suppose it's prompted a huge reaction that Chris Sutton has accused the PFA chief, Gordon Taylor, of letting players down. This Glasgow University study was done in relation to neurodegenerative diseases from the general population, and it was commissioned by England's FA and the PFA and assessed the medical records of 7,676 men who played professional football in Scotland between 1900 and 1976. And this goes back to Jeff Astley's death as well in 2002. And Chris Sutton is of the opinion that this study actually should have come out around then. And Jeff Astley's daughter has been very, very harsh. Dawn Astle has been very harsh in terms of the findings, and she says it won't bring her father back, but we wanted questions answered about this. John?
Well, there's a couple of aspects there, Johnny, and you read them out, which was the study and Chris Sutton making comments about the Professional Footballers Association. Now, I'll start off with the Professional Footballers Association. In my experience through Nobby Styles, the Professional Football Association haven't done nearly as much as they should have done for players who have illnesses, not just dementia, but other illnesses that...
You've referenced Nobby Styles before as well on this matter.
Well, Nobby Styles is a brother-in-law of mine, and Nobby got dementia 5 or 6 years ago, and he's in a home now. But I think I can honestly say the response from the Professional Football Association hasn't been good at all. And neither as Chris Sutton, I think with his dad had dementia, hasn't been good at all. So
was Nobby abandoned kind of and just forgotten about?
They didn't do anything to help him, and like the Professional Football Association have a lot of money, and I think they should be proactive in people who have serious illnesses to help them as much as they possibly can. And I think they have a policy at the professional that you have to go to them, right? I don't think, and a lot of people have gone and haven't had a very good response, nobody included in that. So that's one aspect of it. The other aspect of it is does heading the ball cause the dementia? So there's two separate issues there. No matter how the players got dementia, shouldn't matter to the Professional Football Association. It's the fact that they got it and they should be there to help them. Now, they might help some of them, but I don't think the help has been anywhere near as good as it should be. Now, the other point that you're talking about there is, does heading the ball give the players, help to give players dementia or get dementia, right? I think it's very, very difficult to prove that anyway, because I'll give you my own experience of it. I played with, say, 18 lads in the squad at Leeds United for 12 years. And as far as I know, and I'd know anyway, none of those lads have had dementia. Right? And I think in Jeff Assel's case, Jeff Assel was a header of the ball, but Jack Charlton was a header of the ball, Norman Hunt was a header of the ball, Joe Jordan was a, Mick Jones was, Alan Clark. And what I'm saying is, Dana, I honestly, I wouldn't be an expert on it, but I think if you took a survey of solicitors, for example, over the same time as we did at professional footballers, I'm not so sure there'd be much difference in it. And it's going to be impossible to prove it. I mean, in the Astle case, they took a case or made a very, very public case for Jeff, and maybe that the Professional Football Association or the clubs. But in Jeff Assel had at least 3 clubs, right? So you'd have to ask, which club did he get the dementia from? Or can you prove it? You know?
Well, it's probably a case of just, I should mention as well, our football coverage is brought to you with thanks to Paddy Power. It's probably a case of just year after year of maybe your head isn't designed for that sort of contact. And I suppose, is it a positive that heading has, I wouldn't say it's gone out of the game, but it's a lot more about being on the ground now. And as you mentioned earlier, the ball has changed as well. It's a lot lighter.
The ball has changed, yeah, but like...
The figures are bad though, John. 3.5 times is... That's not good.
Times of what though?
The average.
But what's the average?
Well, the average... It basically says if you play football, you're far more likely to get dementia.
Yeah, well, I'm not going against the experts' view. I'm only giving you my opinion from what I think or saw in my career. Now, I wasn't a header of the ball, but Joe Jordan was, and Mick Jones was, and Alan Clark was, and and they headed the ball as much as anybody, right? So, where do you leave them? You know, it's. I mean, I'd love to see them get a cure for it and to find out exactly what it does. But it's a big job, as we know. A lot of people get dementia, Johnny, as we know from people who never headed the ball. There's an awful lot of people get dementia, whether it be ladies or gentlemen. Unfortunately, get this dreadful disease. But even in football, Johnny, I mean, say they do prove that heading does give you. Are players going to stop playing? You know, players, they're not going to stop playing. So, it'd be nice to know, and it'd be nice to get a cure for footballers, if they possibly can. What the cure is, that's what I'd be really interested in. What's the cure to stop professional footballers getting it? I don't think it can be done. I mean, as you said, they don't head the ball as much. Now, they head it quite a lot. The players who are in certain positions still head the ball quite a lot. The ball is a lot lighter than it was in my day. But... a cure, stop it. But I think in football, professional football, it's like they talk about American football. You know, there's a big case of that.
Serious issue.
But if you want to be a professional footballer, Johnny, you're not going to stop.
No.
Because, first of all, you don't know if you're going to get it, you're not going to get it. If it's your living and it's what you're going to do, I can't see where they're going to stop heading the ball. Maybe they can put stuff on your head, helmets or whatever it might be. I don't know. If
it were 10 times as much, people wouldn't stop playing football. You know?
I don't think so.
You know, just finally on this though,
and hopefully they do find a cure for it. And I don't want to mean to be cruel in what I'm saying here. It's a dreadful disease. I know from first hand. With Nobby's a brother-in-law of mine. He's a lovely lad, great lad. He's had it 5 or 6 years in a home now.
How hard has that been on you? And because just how, the fact that he's related to you, but to see somebody, and we all get old, or most of us get old or whatever, but just to see that progression.
It's very sad. I mean, Kay is married to my sister, and she looks after him as best. He's in a home now. I think the family would be disappointed in the lack of support from the clubs that Nobby played for, but particularly the PFA, who do have the resources. They have an awful lot of money, 50 million in the bank and all that. I think that they should be proactive in players like Nobby.
Even the older
Martin Peters. No, there's a lot of players get it from the 66 team particularly. And I don't know their experience, but I know Nobby's experience. And the best I can say is that they haven't been helpful. And it's a sad situation. Nobby was a wonderful lad, modest, a terrific lad. And, to see him now, it's very, very hard for Kay and the family. and it's very sad.
Before we wrap up, so are you hopeful Ireland could do it against Denmark? Because I suppose there's a prevailing mood of despondency after the last couple of games.
Well, we had 2 bad games. We didn't play well at all, Johnny, but we're still there, you know. Like, is it possible to beat Denmark? Yeah, it is possible to beat them. And things change very, very quickly. You know, if we beat Denmark, Mick is going to be one of the saints of Ireland. You know, that's the way it works. And of course we're in with a chance. I mean, I don't think there's any great teams out there. Denmark are a very good team. But actually, I saw it was the Swiss should have beat them, I think, when I saw them.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
So they're not as good as, not only as good a team as Swiss. So it all depends on the night. How we play, can we do it? Is it possible to do it? Yeah, it is possible to do it. It won't be easy, but it's never easy. But it's possible to do. We can still do it. And fingers crossed that we do.
You're still as energised by it as ever anyway.
I'd love to see us doing it.
Yeah, wouldn't we all?
See us doing it.
That was John Giles.